Who should use a financial advisor, and why do people use financial advisors?
Well, first it depends on your circumstances. If you're just getting started and you have credit card debt, you don't have an emergency fund, and that's where you ought to start. A financial advisor should give you that advice. You shouldn't be investing if you're in that situation. So what we would say is, let me help you figure out a plan to get your debt paid. And then when your credit card debt and your other debt's paid off, maybe except for your house, let's get back together and let's set out a plan. So, and different financial advisors may have different thresholds with who they'll work with. Someone who's been in business a long period of time, they may only work with clients who have certain size accounts. But when you're getting started, there are people out there that will work with you when you first get started. But you've got to make sure they have a heart of a teacher. They want to teach you about what you're doing, not just trying to sell you stuff. So if they'll educate you, then that's the kind of person. And you ought to interview 2 or 3. You ought to ask people, who do you use? What do you like about them? What don't you like about them? How do they communicate with you? So end up picking somebody that has a heart of a teacher and isn't doing fancy stuff. When you first get started, it's the basics. If they're trying to get you to invest in some fancy deal, you probably ought to run away. If they say you need to start a Roth IRA, then you're probably working with somebody that's dealing with the basics.
I would equate it to, when you're sick, do you go to a doctor? You generally don't self. Some people try to take it in their own hands, which sometimes it probably works, but oftentimes it's better to go to a professional. I would equate the same thing with your financial health. I think that's where our training is. That's where our education. That's what we do all day, every day. So I think it is really important for folks to utilize a financial planner. I think oftentimes people only focus on the retirement and the investments, but they don't take into consideration the estate planning, like your wills, power of attorney, all that kind of stuff. They don't take into consideration effective tax planning, insurance planning, life insurance, disability, long-term care, health insurance. They don't look at everything in a big picture college planning. So I think where a financial planner is very valuable is where they'll take the comprehensive financial plan and they pull it apart and they evaluate each one of those pieces, make sure it's in good shape, throw it back together, implement the plan, monitor the plan, make tweaks and changes over time when needed, but provide a really great service to folks. And I think people miss the boat when, in my humble opinion, when they do it themselves, because most of the time, again, generally, people are not going to have the time it takes to do the adequate amount of research, to have the proper training, to do all of these different pieces. Right. So, yeah, I would certainly highly recommend people to use a financial planner.
I'm sure a common question your clients ask you is, Bob, what's the market going to do this year? Can you guarantee me that my money's going to grow X percent? What's the answer to that?
Well, what I tell my folks that I work with, I've ordered a crystal ball from China, and it hasn't come in yet. So when I get it, it's on back order. It's been on back order for a while, but when it comes in, I'll give you an idea.
That's awesome.
Nobody can tell you what the market is going to do. As a matter of fact, I think it consistently proves people wrong. In 2012, I think if you ask the average guy on the street, how's the stock market doing? You remember the big news this past year was how the European debt crisis, Greece and all those issues. You had the election, which you had people on both sides of that. Mm-hmm. You had the fiscal cliff that was referred to just over and over. You would have thought that 2012 was a bad year. And actually, it was a really, really good year for the stock market. Most people at the beginning of the year would not have believed that. When you deal with the stock market, there are facts and fundamentals, and there's emotion, fear, and greed. And my simple way of explaining it is, in the long run, facts and fundamentals prevail. If a company makes money, then generally speaking, the value of that company goes up, and their stock value goes up. But headlines, both world headlines and national headlines, company headlines, can drive the price any one particular day. And the stock market is really all a bunch of buyers and a bunch of sellers. And when more people want to sell than buy, the price goes down. And when more people want to buy than sell, the price goes up. A good financial advisor will never guarantee anything. But what they'll help their clients do is be diversified, which means being invested in more than one thing, because no one can predict what's going to do best next. That's how a client wins in the long run. And the other big piece is time. If you invest over a long period of time, you're probably going to do pretty well if you're pretty well diversified.